Deuteronomy 15, verse 1. At the end of every 7 years you shall cancel debts. This is the way it shall be done. Every creditor shall release that which he has lent to his neighbor. He shall not require payment from his neighbor and his brother, because Yahweh's release has been proclaimed. Of a foreigner you may require it, but whatever of yours is with your brother, your hand shall release. Comment: this is a foreign concept to us. Yahweh commanded that every 7 years, every debt that one Israelite owed to another was to be canceled. Cancellation in Hebrew is shmita, which means to let drop or to release. So it was the year of release, the year of Shemitah. Yahweh also called for the release of Hebrew servants in the year of Shemitah, Exodus 21:2, and for a 1-year interruption of planting, pruning, and harvesting, Leviticus 25, verses 4 and 5. Israelites were to live off their stores during that year, Leviticus 25:22. However, Yahweh did not call for the release of foreign servants or the release of debts owed by foreigners. So for debtors or for servants, the Shemitah was a time of rejoicing. They were going to be released from their debt or from their servitude. And for the fields, it was a time to replenish the fertility. For more prosperous Israelites who held land or servants or IOUs, the Shemitah was a time to exercise faith that Yahweh would bless them for observing the Shemitah. For Yahweh did indeed promise to bless the fields in the 6th year, so they would produce enough in that year to last 3 years, Leviticus 25:21. However, Israel did not observe the Shemitah faithfully, Jeremiah 34:14. Yahweh warned Israel at Sinai that if they didn't keep the Shemitah, he would exile them from the land until all the missed Shemitahs were made up, Leviticus 25:33 and 34. It turned out that Israel failed to observe 70 Shemitahs, which made 490 years without a Shemitah. So Yahweh exiled them to Babylon for exactly 70 years, 1 year for every missed year of Shemitah, 2 Chronicles 36:21. The Shemitah was distinct from the year of Jubilee, which Israel was supposed to observe every 50 years, Leviticus 25, verses 10 and 11. That was a time when Israelites were supposed to return all land to the families that originally owned it, and like on Shemitah, there was to be no sowing or reaping. Verse 4, however, there shall be no poor with you, for Yahweh will surely bless you in the land which Yahweh your God gives you for an inheritance to possess it. If only you diligently listen to Yahweh your God's voice, to observe to do all this commandment which I command you today. Comment: if only they will listen to Yahweh's voice, there won't be any poor, but they're not going to listen. That's why Yahweh is going to have a lot more to say about the poor in this chapter. Verse 6, for Yahweh your God will bless you as he promised you. You will lend to many nations, but you will not borrow. You will rule over many nations, but they will not rule over you. If a poor man, one of your brothers, is with you within any of your gates in your land, which Yahweh your God gives you, you shall not harden your heart nor shut your hand from your poor brother, but you shall surely open your hand to him and shall surely lend him sufficient for his need which he lacks. Comment: the New Testament is replete with similar commandments. 1 John 3:17, quote, whoever has the world's goods and sees his brother in need and closes his heart of compassion against him, how does God's love remain in him? And Matthew 5:42, quote, give to him who asks of you, and do not turn away from him who wants to borrow from you. And Galatians 2:10, quote, they only asked us to remember the poor, which very thing I was also zealous to do, end quote. Now coming up, since debts shall be released every 7th year, it's going to be hard for a poor man to get a loan in the 6th year because the lender knows there would be hardly any time to pay it back. Moses says, be generous with your lending even when the Shemitah is near. Verse 9. Beware that there not be a wicked thought in your heart, saying, the 7th year, the year of release, is at hand, and your eye be evil against your poor brother, and you give him nothing, and he cry to Yahweh against you, and it be sin to you. You shall surely give, and your heart shall not be grieved when you give to him, because that for this thing Yahweh your God will bless you in all your work, and in all that you put your hand to. Comment: verse 9, the poor will cry to Yahweh against the one who didn't lend to him. Exodus 22:23, Yahweh will surely hear the poor man's cry. Verse 11, For the poor will never cease out of the land. Therefore I command you to surely open your hand to your brother, to your needy, and to your poor in your land. Comment now back to the year of Shemitah, verse 12. If your brother, a Hebrew man or a Hebrew woman, is sold to you and serves you 6 years, then in the 7th year you shall let him go free from you. When you let him go free from you, you shall not let him go empty. You shall furnish him liberally out of the flock, out of your threshing floor, and out of your winepress. As Yahweh your God has blessed you, you shall give to him. You shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and Yahweh your God redeemed you. Therefore I command you this thing today. Comment. Coming up, the Hebrew servant might not want to be released in the year of the Shemitah. Verse 16. It shall be, if he tells you, I will not go out from you, because he loves you and your house, because he is well with you, then you shall take an awl and thrust it through his ear to the door, that he shall be your servant forever. Also to your female servant you shall do likewise. Comment. This is a picture of Christian servitude to the Lord. If we love him and we don't want him to release us, he'll put his mark on us and we'll be his forever. Now back to servants who do wish to be released during the Shemitah, verse 18. It shall not seem hard to you when you let him go free from you, for he has been double value of a hired man as he served you 6 years. Yahweh your God will bless you in all that you do. Comment. The servant was twice as valuable as a hired hand because it's less expensive to own a servant than to hire help. Since he's already been so productive for you, he's made up his price, and you shouldn't have any issues with letting him go on the Shemitah. Plus, Yahweh will make sure you're rewarded for releasing him. Now coming up, in addition to taking the tithe every year to the place Yahweh chooses to place his name, the Israelite also owes Yahweh every firstborn male of the flock and herd. After bringing it to that place, the Israelite and his household may eat it or bring it to the tabernacle for sacrifice, or give it to the priest or other Levites. Verse 19. You shall dedicate all the firstborn males that are born of your herd and of your flock to Yahweh your God. You shall do no work with the firstborn of your herd, nor shear the firstborn of your flock. You shall eat it before Yahweh your God year by year in the place which Yahweh shall choose, you and your household. Comment. Now what if the firstborn has a defect? Verse 21. If it has any defect, is lame or blind, or has any defect whatever, you shall not sacrifice it to Yahweh your God. You shall eat it within your gates. The unclean and the clean shall eat it alike as the gazelle and as the deer. Only you shall not eat its blood. You shall pour it out on the ground like water. Comment. Verse 12, you shall eat it within your gates, which means in your hometown or at home, and you don't have to be ceremonially clean to eat it. That's the chapter. It's going to take faith to observe the Shemitah and be kind to the poor. Yahweh promises the Israelite will not suffer for it. He'll make sure of that. Verse 10 again, quote, For this thing Yahweh your God will bless you in all your work and in all that you put your hand to. End quote. Deuteronomy 16 is next at landofhavilah.net. Deuteronomy 16.